In the early hours of May 3, 2022, prison officials at the Mangaung prison in South Africa were notified of a suspicious fire which broke out in cell 35. This was a solitary cell meant for extreme cases only, and was often left unoccupied due to the odd positioning of the cell, which was basically hidden from view due to a blind spot in the CCTV network. On this day, however, as fate would have it, the cell was occupied by a notorious prisoner, Thabo Bester, who was more commonly known as the Facebook Rapist. He was serving a life sentence for a string of heinous crimes, including murder, rape, and armed robbery. When prison officials eventually reacted to the fire that broke out, they recovered the remains of an unknown person believed to be Bester. He was laying under the mattress of his bed, and he was burnt beyond recognition. His death was originally ruled a suicide, and to be honest, many people rejoiced because they believed that justice had finally been served, as Bester wouldn't be able to hurt another person again. The supposed end of Thabo Bester's reign of terror brought a fleeting sense of peace to those who'd been affected by his actions. However, just 10 months later, a user on social media uncovered something so shocking and disturbing that it shattered any remnants of solace. As she mindlessly scrolled through social media, a user stumbled upon a seemingly ordinary photo. It depicted South African influencer and celebrity doctor Nandipha Magudumana shopping at the Sandton complex. The photo was taken by an admiring fan who couldn't resist capturing their favorite influencer in the moment. At first, it seemed like nothing out of the ordinary, but as the user gazed deeper into the image, a realization struck them. The man shopping alongside the doctor bore an uncanny resemblance to the notorious Thabo Bester. Despite a change in hairstyle and the use of sunglasses, a childhood friend of Bester's would later say that he was convinced that the man in the photo was indeed that of the Facebook Rapist. The photo spread across social media platforms at lightning speed, igniting a firestorm of opinions and debates. Some argued that the man in the photo was undoubtedly Thabo Bester, while others vehemently disagreed. And while opinions were certainly divided, one thing that everyone could agree on was that it was impossible for it to actually be him, as Thabo died in the prison fire in May 2022. But as the debate raged on, cracks in the official story began to surface, and suddenly, nothing was certain anymore. The prison mugshot of Thabo Bester showed him towering at 5.6 feet, yet a leaked autopsy report claimed that the body recovered was that of an adult male standing at a mere 4.6 feet. The report also stated that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, with no signs of smoke inhalation, leading to the conclusion that the person was already dead before the fire even started. The story was becoming more and more like a Hollywood thriller, where truth was stranger than fiction. The inconsistencies were eventually too great to ignore, and the public was left with more questions than answers. Had Bester really perished in the fire, or had he managed to escape? How had he broken out of one of South Africa's most secure prisons? And the most haunting question of all, who was the person found burnt beyond recognition in the cell? The public's demand for answers grew stronger, and it wasn't long before prison officials were forced to respond.
The Department of Correctional Services has concluded that the body found in a Mangaung cell is not that of so-called Facebook rapist Thabo Bester. It says Bester escaped from custody in May last year. The department says there will be serious consequences for those found to have been involved in this escape.
We found Bester.
When did you find him?
We find him, we sent to prison for life.
No, but now he's escaped.
We find Bester,
yeah.
Prison for life and 75 years.
Yeah, where's he now?
Bester was jumped out of correctional service,
yeah.
And we were chasing Bester for the second time,
yeah.
as the police. But we will find Bester.
Yeah.
We're getting good clues.
Thabo Bester was born into a world of darkness, his existence marked by tragedy and crime. Born on June 13th, somewhere between 1983 and 1986, his mother was only 16 when she was brutally raped by a local storekeeper who offered her a ride home after visiting her sister. He was subsequently raised by his grandparents, and from a very young age he seemed to be destined for a life of crime. When he was only 4 years old, his grandfather found him in possession of a large wand of cash, and after confronting Thabo, he told him that a neighbor had given it to him. His grandfather then took him to the lady's house, and when they got there, she didn't even know that the money was missing. A year later, when Thabo was 5, the owner of a local tavern confronted the family after Thabo admitted to stealing a bottle of coins from the family's home. By the time Thabo was 17 years old, he had already completed his first stint in prison. He was charged and convicted of house burglary and stealing from someone in the community. In 2004, he was released into the care of his mother, but his criminal tendencies continued to flourish. In 2005, just as social media was gaining momentum, Thabo Bester embarked on a new career as a con man. Posing as an international scout, he approached aspiring models online and promised to send them for auditions and arrange brand collaborations, all for a fee to belong to his fake agency. However, it wasn't just money that he took from his victims. He would gain their trust, meet some of them in person, and then rob them of their possessions. His scheme was eventually uncovered in 2009 when he was charged with fraud and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Despite serving only 2 years, he was released on parole in 2011, ready to wreak havoc once again. Shortly after his release in 2011, Thabo doubled down on his deceitful ways, taking his model agency scam to new heights. He continued with his scam of pretending to be an international scout, but now also forged paperwork to secure chartered planes, luxurious hotel rooms, and expensive camera equipment, all while providing fake payment receipts. He'd then fly down aspiring models with promises of success, only to rob them of their possessions and sell the expensive camera equipment he acquired. He was eventually nabbed at the end of 2011, where he was charged for robbing and raping 2 women. Thabo was then released on bond while the investigation continued. That same year, he also met an aspiring model and car saleswoman, Nomfundo Tyhulu, who sold him a BMW. He once again posed as an international talent scout and quickly charmed his way into Nomfundo's life. The two became close and eventually dated for a short while, before Bester stabbed her to death at a bed and breakfast in Cape Town. He was arrested in 2012 and found guilty of the murder of Nomfundo Tyhulu, as well as the rape and robbery of the 2 women in 2011. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years.
Because for me, what's kind of striking is that, I mean, you have the 2 rapes that occur, a week or 2 apart. And then the murder was how long after that?
A week apart.
It's as if all of a sudden something snapped and the whole ball game has changed, where it was purely in the past, financial conning, getting money, fraud, etc. It's as if it had gone into the next level. And
well, one thing I also feel like, I read the papers and I feel like they're talking about somebody else, not me. I look at these charges and I don't think it's me.
That you're responsible for a death, but it not as a result of an intentional thing that you started out.
I'm responsible for a death, yes, that's 100% correct. I'm not responsible for killing her. I did not kill her. If I'm sure if I wanted to kill her, I could have. I'm not a stupid person. I could have done it in a way that the cops wouldn't even know it was me. The rapes happened in a way that I did not know I was doing rape until I left the premises. Because if I knew I was doing rape, I could have covered myself up by using certain methods so that my fingerprints were not there and etc. So it only became known to me that I did rape when I left. So that's the way I feel about the 3 incidents. I'm sitting in a position where I feel I want this thing to pass as soon as possible. But I also, as a human being, want to be one day free. Despite the fact that I feel guilty and I feel that I'm wrong.
Sure.
The courts were well aware of Thabo Bester's dangerous nature, so they deemed it necessary to send him to the Mangaung Correctional Services, a maximum security prison run by multinational private security firm G4S, as part of a public-private partnership. Dubbed as an upscale, well-run, and highly secure facility, Mangaung was the 2nd largest private prison in the world. This facility was supposed to be a place that even the most hardened of criminals would fear, but as you will find out later, the things that were allowed to happen here would make you sick to your core. But let's first start with the night of the inexplicable and suspicious fire. Fellow inmates at the prison said that Thabo Bester was a moody inmate who always seemed to be in a somber mood. However, in the days leading up to the fire, He was unusually happy, telling inmates that he wouldn't be around much longer. They thought it was strange but didn't pay too much attention to him. On May 2nd, 2022, without warning, Bester was removed from his cell he shared with other inmates and told he was being placed in solitary confinement. The reason for his removal wasn't revealed, but it was said that Bester was kicking and screaming, putting up a show. At 3 a.m. on the morning of May 3rd, an official reported a mysterious smoke coming from the wing where Thabo Bester was held. The police were only called at 4:25, nearly an hour and a half later. The call wasn't answered because they'd apparently had the wrong number on file, and officials then dialed 10-111, South Africa's version of 911, at 5 a.m. that morning. Medical services at the institution declared Thabo Bester dead at 5:10 a.m., and police arrived at 6:45 a.m. An initial investigation of the scene declared that Thabo Bester committed suicide by setting his cell alight using a lighter he had with him, as prisoners who smoke was allowed to carry a lighter on them. The body was sent to the state pathologist who performed an autopsy on the body, as well as to conduct DNA tests, but this is where holes would start to appear. Initial reports from the pathologist confirmed that the person died of blunt force trauma to the head, and that there were no signs of smoke inhalation in the lungs. The report also stated that the pathologist noticed a strong odor of accelerant on the body. They could, however, not confirm if the body was indeed that of Thabo Bester, because the country had a backlog of DNA tests, and it typically takes about 4 months for results to be returned. Back at the scene of the prison, authorities noticed that a number of CCTV cameras were tampered with, and that it wasn't pointing in the correct position. Additionally, at 2:59 a.m., literally seconds before the smoke was first reported, almost at the edge of the frame on the CCTV footage, 2 people dressed in warden uniforms could be seen hastily exiting the prison. The footage could not determine who these people were. It was clear that the suspicion of foul play was warranted, and officials were determined to uncover what had happened, and they were especially interested in the DNA results. However, 3 days after the fire broke out, celebrity doctor and influencer Nandipa Magudumana approached the state mortuary. She informed them that she was the customary wife of Thabo Bester and demanded that the body be handed over to her so that she could bury her husband. The mortuary was reluctant to hand the body over, but the doctor then approached the courts claiming that the dignity of her husband was being trampled on, as she wasn't allowed an opportunity to bury him. In court records, she claimed that she and Thabo met at university and that they rekindled their relationship in 2019 and eventually got married in 2020 in line with customary law. This was a strange statement to make because court records reflected that Thabo dropped out of school when he was 11 years old, and Nandipa was still officially married to her ex-husband even though she claimed to be divorced. Even though there was a lot of questions still up in the air, the body was eventually handed over to Nandipa, and she immediately took it to a crematorium where she intended to cremate it. But just before the body was due to be cremated, another spanner was thrown into the works, and Tharbo's mother came forward to claim the body for herself, saying that she wanted to bury her son. She said that she had no knowledge of Thabo marrying Nandipa, and therefore she had no right to cremate her son. The courts then ruled that the body be returned to the state mortuary while the situation was being resolved. Despite the body having been returned to the morgue, Nandipa went on with her life and it was business as usual. As time passed and the news of Tharbo's death and subsequent investigation went quiet, it seemed that Nandipa and Thabo became more comfortable, often being spotted together in public. That's also when the infamous photo was taken, putting the case firmly back into the spotlight. After the photo spread on social media, many people recognized Thabo as the Facebook rapist, but there were also a number of other people who recognized him by some of his other aliases. One person recognized the man in the picture as Tom Matsep, the CEO of 21st Century Media Company. It turns out that while Thabo was incarcerated, he ran a fake events and production company, which was made to look like a subsidiary of 21st Century Fox. He also claimed to be family of South Africa's richest man and mining magnate Patrice Motsepe, in an attempt to make himself look more credible. The company even had a glitzy launch at the Hilton Hotel in Sandton in 2018, and the event was attended by various celebrities and members of Johannesburg's high society. The event took place on June 13th, the day of Tharbo's birthday, and attendees were told that the chairman of the company, Mr. Tom Motsepe, couldn't attend because he was on a business trip, but would video call in from New York. Unbeknown to the audience, the man appearing on the big screen in front of them was actually the convicted rapist and murderer Thabo Bester, calling in from prison. Thabo, who was dressed in a snazzy suit, which was definitely not prison attire, had the entire audience sing happy birthday to him.
Happy birthday, dear Tom. Happy birthday. We hope you're not crying.
Former employees at the company said that they had no idea that Tom Motsiep was actually Thabo Bester, and they confirmed that he was pretty much hands-on with the company and would transfer funds whenever they needed. They said that Tom, who they thought was based in New York, would often meet with them via video conference discussing strategy for the business. They never believed that anything was wrong, as Tom even had a Twitter profile where he would Photoshop pictures to make it seem like he was doing ordinary things. He was even able to convince employees from other media companies to quit their jobs and join his company instead, believing they were about to work at an industry-leading company associated with 21st Century Fox. It's crazy to think that Thabo Bester was able to run an entire company while behind bars, and it would be naive to believe that the guards had no knowledge about what was going on. After his escape from prison, it's believed that Thabo then assumed the name TK Nkwana, and that he then ran a $1 million scam construction company with celebrity doctor Nandipha Magudumana. It's alleged that the couple convinced several people to pay millions for construction projects, but never delivered the goods. The company was called Aram Properties and registered in the name of Nandipha Magudumana. Many of the victims confirmed that they were introduced to TK by Dr. Magudumana and said that he took care of the day-to-day operations of the business, while Magudumana attended to work at her practice. It has also since been revealed that someone from the official Aram Properties Instagram account had been reaching out to influencers and models, inviting them to audition for a Netflix show called Hot Property Chick. Luckily, it doesn't seem that any of the ladies agreed to the invite, although at least one person agreed to a Zoom meeting to ensure that it was legit. Screenshots from the Zoom meeting shows the profile picture of the initiator seemed to resemble Thabo Bester. During the Zoom call, the lady was invited to Cape Town, where she was due to audition for the Netflix show. Her gut feeling, however, told her that something wasn't right, and she ended up canceling at the last minute. After the pictures of Thabo leaked online, Dr. Nandipha Magudumana abandoned her practice as well as the mansion she was renting with an unknown man. Video footage from a private investigator was recently put online where Dr. Magudumana was approached by a private investigator who was hired by accreditors to track her down. It's believed that she had driven her leased vehicle to the neighboring country of Zimbabwe and that she abandoned the vehicle there, despite still owing approximately $40,000 on the car. The video is believed to relate to an incident in 2022, around the same time as when Thabo escaped from prison.
Dr. Nandipha, how are you, Marcy? Here you are.
Thanks, how are you?
Can we sit?
Yeah, you can sit down.
How are you, mate? I don't know if you want to discuss this in front of your colleague. It's a personal matter with Carbon Black Auto, where you took the car over the border to Zimbabwe. You're still outstanding 700,000 rand. There's a case opened against you. There's a docket against you. So we just want to try and sort this out amicably.
You can speak in front of him.
Okay. Can you carry on?
Okay, ma'am. You borrowed a car from Carbon Black, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you said you want to purchase a vehicle. You signed this letter. Is that right?
Yeah. Right.
Okay, you started paying, then you stopped paying. Then the car tried to cross the border in Zimbabwe with a false number plate.
No.
The car's still standing at the border. We've tracked the car to the border. We're busy
The
to...
hawks are on it here. Thingy, so you want to know what's happening with that thing. I got the purchase
There's outstanding
agreement here.
balance.
As of today, April 7th, 2023, Thabo Bester is still on the run and has not been tracked down since. The whereabouts of Nandipha Magudumana is yet to be determined, and police is looking for her as a person of interest. G4S, the security company who ran the Mangaung prison, maintains that the body found in cell 35 was that of Thabo Bester. They continue to deny that they knew anything about Tharbo's business dealings in prison, and maintained that he only had access to a laptop because he was in the process of completing his studies in prison. The government contract with G4S has since been cancelled.